Are you one of the 9 million Floridians living in a community managed by a property manager or HOA? If you've ever wondered what your rights are as a resident or what your role is as a volunteer board member, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Condo Coaches, your resource for when your gated community starts to feel more like you're stuck behind bars, or when that guy next door decides that a hot pink Chevy on cinder blocks really sets the tone for the neighborhood. The Condo Coaches is brought to you by lmfunding.com. Find the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. And now your host, Johnny Torres.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. It's the Condo Coaches radio show from whenever, wherever you may be listening. Again, you can find us all over the internet, on demand 24/7 at thecondocoaches.com. Also, Facebook and YouTube. Just search The Condo Coaches, and you can also find our podcast on Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, and more, just by searching The Condo Coaches. So just about any way you want to digest your Condo Coaches information, you can do so online. Thank you again for those listening for the first time. If you haven't caught the show before, we are a team of volunteers here sharing our expertise to help you run your homeowners or condominium association effectively, efficiently, and on budget. Joining me for every show is head coach Dean Akers. How are you, sir?
Good, Johnny. How are you today?
Doing great. Feeling good. Got a great show because we got the band back together as we do so every once in a while. So, again, someone who doesn't need much of an introduction these days, but the original Condo Coach, also Candace Gundel. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for coming back.
My pleasure, as always.
We're going to go through a lot of, old laundry here. We're going to cover some questions that we've kind of touched on in the past from people that have sent their questions in. And then we're also going to touch on some legislative things because even though the legislative session supposedly ended about a month ago, it still hasn't been finalized. And so there's some a little bit of last minute negotiations happening. The governor is kind of piecemealing some stuff, and we'll get into what that means for your condominium or homeowner association coming up. We like to open every show going through Facebook messages, emails that we get. If you'd like to submit your issue or your question for the Condo Coaches, there's a few ways you can do that. You can go to our website. Again, it's thecondocoaches.com. Thecondocoaches.com. A great way there. There's a few forms you can fill out that all get back to us for you to send in your question or issue to the show. Another great way is our email address. Our email address, we get that plugged into the right condo coach that's going to help you with your issue, your situation. And then again, sometimes we use those here on the show. Our email address is help@thecondocoaches.com, help@thecondocoaches.com. And last but not least, our phone number, the one that keeps Dean awake at night. It's 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415. And I kind of joke around about that because, Dean's kind of the middleman there, and then he disperses those calls again to get you plugged in to the coach that's going to be best suited to help you with your situation. Again, we cover it all: security, landscaping, insurance, banking, legal matters. And so whatever your issue is, we have somebody on our coaches team, or our squad, as the kids say, that's ready to help you out with your issue. We're going to go back through some of the old emails, and we've actually started to see a little bit of a trend of special assessments come around.
We have.
I'm guessing that means budget season's also not that far down the road, but we had a question last week where they were doing some concrete restoration, and the community was considering doing a special assessment to cover some of the costs because they did not have the money in the reserves to cover this project. Give us a little bit of an idea of what this process is, or how this process should best be handled.
Sure, and it's pretty common. Hopefully you have reserves, but it's common that they don't meet all of your needs, your financial needs. So you may also have to take out a loan or do a special assessment to cover a major thing like concrete restoration. The first place to look is always your bylaws. Look at your association documents. I think everybody's probably sick of hearing me say that,
yeah.
But it's true. It's your number one resource. It's the first place you go.
Yeah, and oftentimes, again, that answer you're looking for is probably already there sitting in those documents.
And if it's not there, then it at least provides a roadmap for you for where you go next.
Yeah.
Most associations can get it done with their licensed community manager. Management companies, experienced managers will have the forms, they'll have the know-how, they'll have done it in the past, and so they can really shepherd a board through that entire process.
Now, in talking about the special assessment, again, automatically people think, oh, we're going to ding you with a big old fat payment that you're going to have to make, right, to get this fixed.
Right.
But as we've talked in the past, you also have, and you mentioned, the banking approach, right, that you can take out a loan as your community. And if you don't really have a lot of other big outstanding projects, this might be an easier way or a softer way to, again, have that financial impact on your residents.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can take out a loan, and then your special assessment doesn't have to be one payment.
Right.
It can be set up over a year, 5 years. It could be monthly. It could be quarterly. It's going to be what matches the financial needs for your community. And also keeping in mind that you want owners to be able to afford this special assessment, because if you don't collect it, that's a whole nother issue.
Well, and that kind of leads to the second email that we got about that, which we were talking about just before the show started. We got an email here from Nancy in Orlando, and she says she pays $235 monthly for her HOA fees. A few years ago, they asked for $813 for additional repairs, so that was one assessment. They gave them 3 months to pay that, and or they threatened with a lien. Not the nicest approach, but I guess you got to do what you got to do. I guess the job was done, but it wasn't done very well. And so now again here 3 years later, and we talked about roads and pavement in a previous episode. I highly recommend you go back and watch that, because this is exactly what this is covering. They're now asking for $1,000 to make almost the same exact repairs that they made 3 years ago when it came to some of the potholes in the community. And so you're talking about an $800 3 years ago, $1,000 now, and she's saying that she's on a fixed income.
Right.
And that's really difficult for somebody that's on a fixed income to come up with that kind of money. So I mean, Dean, would you also recommend, especially for a community like this, to maybe take the loan approach and going through a community association banker?
They may have done that.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But they're asking for that money within a 3-month period. I mean, they're hitting them pretty hard and fast for that assessment.
But if you take the amount of money and you take the amount of units, yes. Could they go through a bank? Yes.
Yeah.
If they need that help, we can reach out to our bank coaches and get that set up for them, which we have done. The fixed income deal is a big issue for a lot of these associations, because even if they're not under fixed income like Social Security, they have a JOB that has been paying them X.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're living in an association where they don't get the choice of an assessment that in some cases could be $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000.
Absolutely.
And,
Well, and again, and so to soften that impact, especially, I mean, you want to look at all your options. And I think too often people are saying, okay, well, everybody's just going to have to cough up an additional X amount of dollars. And so there are other options out there is basically the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, we've been working with the banks, and we've been helping associations. And one thing that Condo Coaches does is we'll put their proposal together. We'll put their narrative, their financials, we'll get them cleaned up so they make sense to the banks, and we present it, and the banks love it. We have one right now that I'm meeting with the board tomorrow night, and they're looking at a $14,000 assessment on units worth about $35,000.
Wow.
The good news is we're making a presentation to the entire community. Could they get it done a little less? Yes. Mm-hmm. This $14,000 brings the community back to pre-2002-3 standard. In other words, it's back like new.
Right.
And the patchwork doesn't increase value, doesn't help, but just kick the can down the road, so to speak.
Sure.
So we're going to be presenting this with bank financing options, so that instead of paying $1,000 today and having this crap, you can now make this investment in your community that will increase the value of the community by over double, actually it's triple the investment amount. So does it make good sense? And we're going to try to get consensus from the resident.
And not putting so much of the burden on the residents as well.
And in this case, it's a heavy investor-owned community now because it went through a lot of trouble.
Sure.
Well, the investors, it's a no-brainer because their rents could go up a hair. They're attracting better tenants, and it's also just a better place.
It really is an investment. I know Nancy had touched on that it's a financial struggle for her, but you need to think of it as an investment. Talk to your board, work with your board on getting on a payment plan. Most boards will be very reasonable. They understand that people have limitations. And again, their goal is to pay this bill, however they have it structured. But I know that Nancy was also concerned about a claim of lien, and she's right. Whether the association presented it correctly, if a special assessment goes unpaid, the association can file a claim of lien and could eventually even foreclose for that lien.
Well, and I would recommend to Nancy, not only for her own personal knowledge, but even so, maybe to share that episode where we talked about roads and paving with her association. And if she wants, we can put her in touch with the coach that's going to help them with these road and paving issues in her community to figure out what's going on there, because a 3-year lifespan for some patchwork doesn't sound good to me, and sounds like they may need a bigger job, but that may take care of that community in a much better way for a longer period of time.
We actually had an interesting condo coach engagement the other day.
Okay.
I had breakfast with this particular board, and we had a condo coach go out try to help them, and it was insurance related. And they were against the wall. They were going to get shut down. They didn't have insurance. It was really a nightmare. So we sent a condo coach out there. The condo coach looked at it and said, have you shopped the market? Oh, yeah, everything's been done. So the condo coach just reached out to the markets, okay? Well, it stirred up a hornet's nest.
Oh, boy.
And the particular insurance agent that was represented by the management company and to this board said, you just kept moaning and everything. At the end of the day, the condo coaches saved $50,000, got them placed with the best possible carrier possibly versus the state of Florida.
Yeah.
But with their existing agents. So the guy was calling me to tell me that we may have overstepped our bounds that we tried to sell. And I said, are you serious? I sat down with him and I said, had you not had an insurance problem, the condo coaches would have never been called.
Right.
The fact you called us, you're right. We stirred it up. Your guy did his job finally.
Oh, man. All right. Well, more Condo Coaches questions and answers coming up for you here on segment 2. It's the Condo Coaches radio show. Again, you want to be a part of the show, just reach out to us on our website, thecondocoaches.com, thecondocoaches.com. Also via email, help@thecondocoaches.com, help@thecondocoaches.com, because that's what we love to do around here. Segment 2, the Condo Coaches, coming up right after this.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
Attention men under the age of 35. You know what really impresses the ladies? When a guy has a few drinks and later gets pulled over for buzzed driving. That could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. There goes let's grab dinner and a movie. Oh, I know. You drive more carefully when you're buzzed. You've proven that hundreds of times. A woman admires that kind of confidence. And you've practiced how to speak if a cop does pull you over. Slowly, clearly, and politely like, "Good evening, officer." A woman admires that kind of foresight. And what woman doesn't find it adorable that you call it buzzed even though the law calls it drunk? You could kiss $10,000 goodbye, along with any chance of having a girlfriend. Because nothing says, "I'm a catch," more than a guy who lives in his parents' basement and calls it my place.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Segment 2 of the Condo Coaches radio show. Thank you so much for listening. Before we go back into some more questions and answers, yes, sir, Dean Akers?
I just wanted to also make a comment on that when we went to break. Well, what's funny about the condo coaches to the associations when we really help them, we're doing this as volunteers.
Yeah.
And, the guy goes, well, the insurance guy, my agent, he's against condo coaches. And I go, of course he is. I said, A, we don't have a bunch of sponsors paying us money that we're trying to protect.
Right.
B, we represent boards and owners, not management companies and not vendors.
Yeah.
And when we're called in to help, we're generally not called in to help because their management company or their vendor is doing a great job. And so I looked at this board president and I said, the guy that didn't do his job was not the condo coaches. As a matter of fact, we did an awesome job. And he leaned back and he started laughing. He goes, you're right. I didn't look at it that way.
Well, at the end of the day, the guy ended up still keeping that policy. He still ended up being, the same insurance agent at the end of the day. So it's not like he lost out, and the community got a much better deal. So it was a win-win all around.
Well, here's the thing. That guy gets in his car, that insurance agent, and he's driving down the road thinking, oh, the condo coaches screwed me up. No, you screwed you up.
Yeah, we saved him. We saved his business there. Yeah. I mean, because he was about to lose that policy.
Well, he would have gotten it sold. He had the policy with the state of Florida. It was going to be $50,000 more. They were stuck.
Yeah.
Okay. They had not researched. The property management company hadn't researched. It's kind of like you're just stuck.
Sure.
They went from being stuck, and through the condo coaches, they went unstuck and saved a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And of course, the guy's blaming. He's saying, well, the condo coaches, what do they know? Well, here's what they know. It's like I told the guy, I said, had you not been stuck, you would have never called me.
Right.
And had you never called me, it wouldn't have mattered.
And they would have paid $50,000 more than they are now.
All right.
Yeah. Well, again, for those of you listening to the Condo Coaches radio show for the first time, as I said, we are a team of volunteers here sharing our expertise on matters pertaining to the condominium and homeowner association industry. And what we've also done to educate you guys out there, we've developed a series of booklets. Okay, now these have been incredibly popular out there. Dean loves to give these out at the trade show. We got these hard copies right here for those of you watching on our live stream. And if you want a copy of these, there are 4 booklets available for free to download right now on our website. All you do is go to thecondocoaches.com/playbook. That's thecondocoaches.com/playbook. And you're going to get these 4 amazing booklets that are going to be an incredible resource to you, whether you're a resident or you're a board member, because we've had both sides download these, and they are absolutely vital. And in fact, they've actually encouraged some folks to take on more responsibility in their communities, run for board positions. The first booklet being, here are the top 10 most important things you need to know if you are an HOA or COA board member. Second booklet is collecting delinquent association fees. We did another show recently on that, on collecting delinquent fees and bankruptcy. Again, incredibly vital for you to, because this is really the lifeblood of your association. So make sure you get caught up on collecting association fees. Our third booklet is the ABCs of holding elections, and a lot of you are coming up on these elections this time of year. That tends to happen, and if you're preparing to do that, absolutely make sure you get this. We also did a great episode with an election monitor, which I think, if again, would be definitely worth your while to go back and watch. You can get that on Facebook or YouTube. And then our final one, but incredibly important as well, and I think the one that the people least likely to like to talk about, because nobody likes to seem like they don't know what they're doing, or they're not knowledgeable in a certain area, but it's understanding your community's finances. And this is probably the one that's most necessary, because most people, again, they don't have the educational background or the professional background to understand what their responsibilities are as a board member. And this book breaks down the financial aspect of that, and really kind of walks you through exactly the things that you need to be looking for.
I can tell you, having Candace and some of our other guests has been extremely helpful. The number one thing I get asked, or that we're really helping on, is when these boards send in their financials, and they send in year 15 and 16 from their management company. So it's easy. They just email us, help at the Condo Coaches, the 2 PDFs.
Right.
And we do an analysis. It's just facts. And I've had more boards go, we've never had anybody explain the financials where we understand it like that.
Right. And that's pretty much their primary responsibility as a board member, is to run the community from a financial standpoint.
Right. So I would encourage any boards out there that if they even have 1% of not even concern, just want to have another set of eyes that'll give them a kind of a
second opinion.
Yeah, no dog in the fight.
Right.
Send that stuff, those PDFs to us, and we'll be back to them within a week or two with kind of just a fact-based analysis.
That's right. It's a free financial assessment that the Condo Coaches will do for you. All you got to do is email us those financial statements to help@thecondocoaches.com, help help@thecondocoaches.com, and people take us up on it all day long, and we're more than happy to do it for you. Just make sure you get those documents over to Dean. Again, that email address, help@thecondocoaches.com. Now, Candace, I know you have a stack of papers over there. Give me one of the other questions that I know we wanted to go back over in terms of some of the ones we've kind of discussed on the surface lately.
Well, and it's interesting because you just mentioned board elections.
Yep.
Some people are just wrapping up their elections, and some people are getting ready to start their elections. We're kind of in the middle of the cycle. And we had an interesting question come up, and it was related to quorum, your annual meeting, and elections.
That's right. I remember.
Yeah. And so this one, unfortunately, I don't know who submitted it, but it's an excellent question. They asked if we don't achieve a quorum at our annual meeting, and then they adjourned and reconvened within 90 days, hoping to get a quorum at the second meeting, and they didn't achieve a quorum, then what happens to their election?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's common, right, Dean? I mean, you talk to these associations all the time. I mean, attendance is a tough thing to get people excited about.
Well, quorum's an issue, and then she also addresses it in the fact that there's not 20 people running for two positions, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, to answer this question is if you don't meet a quorum, then you can't hold a vote.
Right.
You can't vote on if you have amendments or anything, a material alteration. You can't have your election. What happens is the board members that are in place just hold over until the next election so that you still have a board and they continue to operate. Now, we do have pending legislation that Governor Scott may sign, and if he does, it'll go into effect July 1st, that says if you have people running for the board, you have your candidates, and there are fewer candidates than open seats available. So if you have 4 candidates, 7 open seats on your board,
right,
and you don't meet a quorum, you can't have an election, those candidates will automatically be seated into the board. Interesting.
Wow. So without the need for the election.
And only in the situation where you have more vacancies than candidates.
Got it.
But that's something that the legislature recognizes. It's difficult sometimes to seat a board, to meet a quorum, to have an election.
Right.
And so if people are running, we want to make sure that the people who are interested and engaged have that opportunity.
Have an opportunity to take a role.
Yes.
Right. Without, again, waiting until they have a quorum to... And any update on the term limit front? Did that die? Is that still out there? What's the latest on that?
It did pass.
It did.
Governor Scott, again, has not signed any of the community association bills yet.
Yeah.
So term limits are still a possibility. We'll know probably within about 2 weeks. Right now, Governor Scott has the budget, so that's going to be his top priority, and then he'll turn back to signing some of the other bills. The term limits, interestingly, are only if your board has 2-year terms. So if you serve for a 1-year term or a 3-year term, the term limits don't apply.
Interesting.
I'm not entirely sure how we got to that point, but that's where we're at.
Always makes you wonder, like when you see little quirks like that, little kind of loopholes like that, it makes you wonder exactly why that was worded the way it was. So if it's 1 year or 3 years or more, then there's no term limit. But if it's a 2-year term, then there are term limits.
And the term limit is 4 consecutive, so 8 years total.
Okay.
However, you can overcome that term limit if you have 2/3 of the members vote to approve it.
So if 2/3 of the residents approve or re-elect that person, then that nullifies the term limits?
Correct.
Interesting.
Correct. But then again, we have, as we just addressed in the question, we have problems getting to a quorum. So getting 2/3 of the community to show up and to vote the same way is pretty challenging.
Sure. 2/3 of the whole community.
Yes.
So that's never going to happen.
Oh man. Well, and maybe we should do a show on what do people need to do to get people to show up at these meetings.
If we knew that, Johnny, we'd be in the island somewhere retired.
Right, exactly. Is it a potluck? Is it, I'm sure there's all kinds of creative stuff people try out there to get people to show up to these things.
Well, you do it how they capture criminals. You offer free Super Bowl tickets.
Yeah. Or you threaten a special assessment. Yeah. And then people will show up to vote against that.
Right. And then they'll go, oh, no, we were just kidding.
Just kidding.
All right. Well, again, we love taking your calls, questions, emails, whether it be through our website or be it through social media. We watch those as well, so feel free to keep sending those in. You can do those online, and again, you can catch every episode of The Condo Coaches on our social media platforms. It'd be Facebook.com/The Condo Coaches, Facebook.com/The Condo Coaches. If you also want to hit up our video library, there's one on YouTube. YouTube.com. You just search The Condo Coaches. We'll come right up there, and you can see all of our 29 episodes, I believe, now with today's episode. That'll be 29, which is exciting. That's over 24 hours, over a full day of videos, so you can binge watch over a weekend, The Condo Coaches. You can do that on YouTube. And again, you have the audio podcast version, which I love because I got a bit of a commute. And you can do that at iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher. Overcast is also climbing up the podcast charts there for us. Find us online. The Condo Coaches, segment 3. We'll be back right after this.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
Thanks, Julie. And coming up next, is there rain in your weekend forecast? We'll find...
Hey.
Hi.
It's been a while. Great place and nice neighborhood. You must have a strong community association board.
Thanks. I guess so, but I don't pay any attention to that stuff.
Seriously? How do you know for sure the board and community manager are making the right decisions to protect your investment?
I don't, but what am I supposed to do?
You can get involved and connect with CAI.
CA what?
CAI, Community Associations Institute, they're a nonprofit group that has helped us build a great community. They have free resources for your association board, professional training for community managers, and helpful information for homeowners.
Thanks. I'll definitely do that.
Is the time and investment you have made in your home and community protected? Be a smart homeowner and visit CAI at responsiblecommunities.com.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Thank you so very much for listening. Watching the Condo Coaches. Again, our numbers climbing every single week. Whether you be watching on YouTube or on Facebook or wherever you're finding the Condo Coaches, the numbers are just climbing as more people realize that, we're just here to help you guys run your communities effectively, efficiently, and on budget. Joining me as always, head coach Dean Akers, and of course the original Condo Coach with us, Candace Gundel, our legal expertise on hand today, and we were going over questions and answers that we get every single week. We get questions and issues that are submitted to us, not only for discussion but for people who genuinely need our help to navigate these problems. And then we also we're just doing a little bit of legislative updates. We talked about term limits, which is incredibly interesting, and even more so interesting now that we're getting some of the details. Now we just got to wait to see if the governor signs off on them. And we're going to continue on that topic. One of the things that I guess is incredibly concerning is some of the funny things that go on down in South Florida. Let's just kind of put it lightly. Mm-hmm. South Florida, again, kind of ripe for a lot of mismanagement, a lot of wrongdoing when it comes to people who take on the responsibility of running their associations. And so that's kind of led to what?
Criminal penalties.
Criminal penalties for running a homeowners association.
Right. And, a lot of you have probably heard of the grand jury report that came out in South Florida a couple of months ago that highlighted abuses and illegal activity occurring in some associations and some management companies.
Yeah.
And, like you said, it really put the spotlight on South Florida. We like to think that the industry as a whole is very good, but there are those people that take advantage. And the legislature reacted very strongly. And in House Bill 653, which, again, we think Governor Scott will sign in the coming weeks, it criminalizes certain activities by officers and directors of an association as well as their management company.
And are the things that they may face criminal penalties for, are they things that you would normally face criminal penalties for anyways?
Yeah, a lot of it was just reminding people that, listen, if you, if you steal, theft, embezzlement, that's against the law. You can't do that.
Right.
Destruction of the association's official records in furtherance of a crime.
Interesting.
So make sure those official records are maintained because you can be charged with destruction of evidence.
Well, nowadays, again, there's really no excuse to not have multiple copies of everything.
And everything's going digital.
Right.
Everything's going digital. One of the other big ones is forgery of a ballot.
But even digitally, you can still destroy all those files, and maybe even easier so, because, within a few clicks, you've now deleted, whatever document repertoire there was, repository. I don't know. Anyway, so yes. So destruction of documents.
Right. Forging a ballot in an association election or election fraud.
Oh, wow.
Related to the association. We hear a lot of people complain about that. The good news is a lot of times when the coaches come out and we get involved, it was just a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. But if it does occur, it is a crime. The big one that I think a lot of people are not anticipating it being a crime, but you can face criminal and civil penalties if, and I'm going to quote the proposed statute here, an officer, director, or manager solicits, offers to accept, or accepts anything or service of value or a kickback.
Wow.
So, association, their board of directors, they serve for free. It's a volunteer position.
Right.
Managers get compensated through their contract. But if there's any exchange of goods or services.
Now, let me kind of go down that rabbit hole a little bit, because I actually, got to spend some time with the family recently. And so my mom, knowing that I'm doing this show and, on a weekly basis, and she also is someone that has volunteered in the past to be treasurer for her homeowner association. And she tells me that what has become prevalent in her neighborhood or in the neighborhoods around her are that people are taking board positions and then leveraging those positions to benefit their family members who have, let's say, a landscaping company, and so that person who's on that board aren't benefiting directly, but they are allowing their family member to benefit indirectly by bringing them on to provide whatever services.
And it's interesting because that's actually dealt with separately in the pending legislation, but conflict of interest is an issue that came up, and the way the legislature has chosen to deal with it is if a board member, director, or manager has a financial or ownership interest in an entity that wants to do business with the association, then there are certain conflict provisions and loopholes and notices that they have to jump through. That extends out to the third degree of relationship.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and I actually looked this up because I Googled this because I was like, what is the third degree of relationship?
Sure.
I don't know. It's your great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and great-grandchildren.
Wow.
And then anything closer to you than that would be in that conflict.
Wow. So the timing of her question, works out perfectly, because I said no, you should look into, there might be some conflict of interest clauses in your governing documents and that sort of thing. But that's also maybe something that's commonly not in there, right? Is that something?
It's not commonly in there. What you'll see is, the board president can't also be the landscape company.
Sure.
But there's no provision against his brother being the landscaping company,
right,
or, a board president's, son or daughter being the accountant for the association or something like that.
But now it's law.
And now it looks like it's going to be law. And again, it's not that it's completely prohibited.
Yeah.
It's that it has to be out in the open.
It's got to be transparent.
Right, exactly.
Right. Because again, I'm sure there's going to be communities where maybe, the nephew, uncle, whatever of so-and-so who sits on the board maybe has the best landscaping company in town. And if everybody's okay with it, they can sign off on it, but there's going to be a process in place to disclose that.
Right.
Yeah. But I would say, in fairness to just best judgment, anytime you do something like this, you just open Pandora's box. Even if you dot your I's and talk, if your brother or your son's the best landscaper on the planet, step down from the board.
Sure. Yeah, or just say, hey, look, you're just not eligible to take this work. Don't allow them to bid on that work, because you're just begging for trouble.
Yeah, you might do it with all the right intention. The biggest thing about boards that I find, and I'm dealing with one in South Florida, when the new board comes in, if it was your company, you owned it for 20 years and you're making decisions, go whatever.
Yeah.
But you have these new, quote, governments that come in, then they look back. I'm looking at a financial statement now for a board that I'm meeting with the board to go over stuff that's 5 years old of garbage. Now, when we're going to try to true it up.
And they probably don't know any of the history on any of that.
Nobody knows any of the history. And now the management company's saying, oh, you got to pay us all this money to go back and dig boxes out and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, this board today, if somebody came in and said, are those financials right? The answer is no, they're not. You're responsible today. Why did you do them right? They've been wrong for a long time.
Sure.
So what happens with anybody is you see these kind of transitions and everybody's second guess. Every new board that's kind of an overthrow board, they meet me and they go, those guys were doing everything wrong. And then the next group 5 years from now go, those guys were doing everything wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think people just get out of bed in the morning to do everything as wrong as some people make it out to
I
be.
hope not.
Well, and that's and that's the other reason why I think these booklets that we've put together, the playbooks, are so incredibly important, because oftentimes it's the perception, right? It's people not having the knowledge of what it takes to serve on these boards, not knowing how they are supposed to be run and why they're supposed to be run a certain way. And a lot of those things people figure out once they get elected. They don't know those things going in, and they go criticizing without knowing the process. And that's when they, until they're sitting in that seat, they realize that, oh, okay, now I understand why things were being done a certain way.
Well, I got to tell you, this is really cool timing for this, because we're doing a presentation tomorrow to a big association of a visionary statement to get buy-in for a big assessment. But we're doing it to enjoin the community versus jam the community. Then we're meeting with a big group in October. We're setting it up right now. They're providing us 10,000 email addresses to do an online survey. The Condo Coaches will be doing an online survey.
Yep.
Then we'll be meeting with them in October, this 100 associations, to go through a strategic visionary plan of what they want to look like. Well, the board has the right to just jam them.
Sure.
But this is going to be, I think, a great form of communication that we can help them with.
Right. Why not get the buy-in from the community early on?
Yeah.
And address any issues or things they
Correct.
might, any oversight up front.
Yep.
Right.
Well, anything else on the legislative front? I mean, the criminal penalties, that's a pretty big deal.
The criminal penalties are really big. It might not be a hot topic for our owners or our board members, but for the property managers that watch the show, estoppel legislation is very big.
Now, explain to me what that is, because you mentioned it here while we were in between, segments, and I've of all the shows we've done, it's the first time I've even heard that word.
Right. So an estoppel is a payoff, basically, on an account, and they're most commonly used for a title company at a closing. And so they'll contact the association and say, are there any back dues? Are there any fines? Is the property up to date? Does it have any violations? And they'll get all this information so that they can guarantee title for the new owners.
Going back to a question that we had a few weeks ago where a woman was looking at buying a condo, and she was asking, what does she need to know? And one of those things are the financial status of that, not only that unit, but that community.
Yes.
An estoppel will only deal with
It's
that
only
unit.
only that
Sure,
unit.
sure, but I just mean in general,
Right.
it's just having an awareness of the financial status of that unit.
Sure. Sure.
Because again, often people say, okay, well, what's the price? All right, that's a good price, not knowing that there's a whole bunch of garbage piled on in the back that they're trying to keep hidden.
Well, you'll see this in a short sale. Somebody will buy in a short sale a unit. They'll go to get an estoppel, but the short sale did not relieve, correct, the assessments that were owed. It relieved the interest.
If you have title insurance, you're fine. It's when people close on a property without title
Right.
insurance, would they just get a quit claim deed instead of what's called a warranty
Right.
deed, then you're opening yourself up to a whole bunch of liability. But the estoppel is the official document that conveys what's owed on a particular property.
Okay.
The legislature got very involved in this. I could go on for hours. There's going to be very specific forms, fee caps, information, new timelines, statutory timelines, and repercussions if you don't meet those timelines. So if you're on a board, I would ask your property manager or whoever you have doing that to make sure that they're aware of it
Okay.
and that they're planning for it, because it goes into effect July 1st.
All right. Well, that's something you want more information on, because again, it's a pretty deep topic. Reach out to us via email, help@thecondocoaches, help@thecondocoaches.com. We'll get you plugged in with Candace. Final segment of the Condo Coaches radio show coming up right after this.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
With everything you've done to lift up those around you during your military career, we're not going to let your money concerns get you down. We're the NFCC, and we've got your back on this one. As your financial advocate, we're dedicated to improving the financial health of all members of the military community. Whether your debt issues are related to student loans or housing or involve credit cards, our goal is to help you to defend your financial future. NFCC certified credit counselors have already made the difference for thousands of military members and their families. Let us make a difference for you and yours. Schedule a confidential financial review with an objective nonprofit NFCC financial counselor. Call us today at 877-404-6322. That's 877-404-6322. Or visit us at nfcc.org/military. You owe it to yourself. Get relief now.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Final segment of the Condo Coaches show. If you're just tuning in, again, we talk about the community association, neighborhood association, condominium association, whatever you want to call it, all the issues, hoops and hurdles and legal matters that happen with living under an association in your community. And again, if you want to be a part of the show, a few ways you can do that: thecondocoaches.com, thecondocoaches.com. You can also reach out to us via email, help@thecondocoaches.com, help@thecondocoaches.com. And last but not least, our phone number, 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415. Today, we've been talking about the questions that we get through not only our website, but our email address and our social media accounts, but also some of the legal matters, and especially right here on the tail end of a legislative session, where some might say is still going in some respects. We might even see a special session come to fruition in Tallahassee. We want to at least kind of bring you up to speed on where things are, because there is quite a bit of legislation that's going on that's going to affect your homeowners or condominium association.
Can I ask Candace a question?
Yeah, please.
Would this be considered one of the more active legislative sessions with condo laws and stuff?
Absolutely.
And what do you think or got that going?
Well, last year, because the session ended early, some of the estoppel legislation would have passed last year had they not ended early. So some of that is just a carryover, but we really hadn't had any major community association legislation for a couple of years. So this is a lot of issues getting clarified in a couple of big bills. We've talked about the estoppels, the criminal penalties, but there's a lot going on. They were clarifying fire sprinklers.
Who drives this? Because typically in legislative stuff, there's people kind of behind the scenes driving it. What groups drove this?
There are a couple of different lobbying efforts that drove this, as well as some legislatures that are just very active in the space and have constituents that are very vocal, especially out of South Florida. We talked about criminal penalties really came forth because of that grand jury report. So there are things that have happened that have driven this. But this is a very active year. Would
you say it's also because the market is somewhat normalized, and so it's kind of given everybody the chance to kind of get settled in, or not really? I mean, I just would feel that maybe some of this has come because now, we're kind of back on the upswing in terms of the real estate market, and there's people more, now there's more people getting back into these association communities.
Certainly some of that is, Johnny, and we have some legislation on terminations, on condominium terminations that got passed that's directly a result of what's going on in the economy. But a lot of it is just glitch fixes. This needed clarified, or we realized that, we didn't really address this issue, but it keeps coming up. So let's create a law for it.
Or even potentially, like you said, in South Florida, where maybe there's been a rash of issues that have said, okay, we need to do something about this.
Right.
But there's always been criminal laws against embezzlement. It's not like, you're in a condominium, you can embezzle there because there's not a law.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, having read the original drafts of the criminal penalties legislation, it was very broad and was going to expose a lot of people. And really, we were afraid that it was going to discourage people from serving on the board. So the community association lobby and the attorneys and the people that work with the legislatures and our lobbyists, we had a very vocal time with that particular, with the criminal penalties, to get it down to basically existing crimes. This is already a crime, but we're codifying it here to remind people And then they broadened it a little bit with the kickbacks, things like that weren't necessarily a crime, just sort of unethical.
Well, and again, there are certain circumstances, right, that are specific to this industry, if you will, of homeowners and condominium associations that close off some of those loopholes that maybe were there, in a more general sense.
So here would be a question, because I know this is in previous lives I've had. So, Billy Bob Landscaping, it has a barbecue on Friday, tailgating at XYZ game. Mm-hmm. And it invites board members of the associations that it services to say, hey, come on by if you're at the game. We're cooking out and we're having wine and whatevers. Is that permissible?
We're going to have to wait and see. We're going to have to wait and see how this gets interpreted. So
we're getting into some murky waters.
Oh, absolutely. There are some issues with the legislation.
So I see what you're saying. You're saying if a vendor decides to hold some kind of an event and invite board members, that there might be a conflict there.
Well, like right now, if I'm going to CAI to a golf tournament, so it's not an educational event.
Yeah. And
I say, Candace, you're the president of the board, and I'm ABC, the law firm. Why don't you play in my foursome? I had to buy a foursome. And the value of that's $125 to play in that foursome.
Oh, would that be considered a kickback?
It's a good or service of value.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It doesn't say a good or service or value of $100 plus. So if you were to take a board president to a breakfast to discuss something, and it wasn't in the confines of a board meeting, in essence, that could be a kickback.
Possibly. We'll have to wait and see how it's interpreted.
And I'm glad you're bringing that up, because we do have a lot of property managers that do listen to the show, and that's going to affect them, like you said. I mean, if anybody's going to create that kind of opportunity, it might be in a property manager, where a property manager might say, oh, hey, our company has a suite for the football game this weekend. Why don't you and your fellow board members go and enjoy the game on us?
Or conversely, Billy Bob Landscaping says to the property manager, come on by the golf tournament. We got some extra tickets and we got a great deal at the golf tournament.
Right.
That property manager, by this virtue of this legislation, could be in trouble.
They could, potentially.
So this is what we now have as a potential can of worms.
Oh, huge. And having discussed this with some other attorneys that practice community association law, the joke is next year's legislative session is going to be as active, if not more so, because we're going to have to clarify all the things that happened this year.
Sure. You find all the loopholes and you find all the misinterpretations, and you're going to have to kind of really, finish molding it a little bit.
Right.
All right. Excellent. So, you talked about the estoppel. You talked about, again, some of the legislative matters, criminal penalties, and that sort of thing. Anything else we should be looking out for?
The other thing that I really want to put on everybody's radar is websites.
That's right.
Okay. So, again, if Governor Scott signs this, it's House Bill 653, and it requires all associations that have at least 150 units to have a website. The deadline is July 1st, 2018, so it gives you a year.
Okay.
But I'm telling you now because it's going to take a little bit of work, and it might also be something that you need to budget for to cover the cost of website if you don't already have a management company or some other vendor that does it for you.
Right.
The law as written right now requires you to post a lot of things on your website, and some of them are pretty obvious. You have to have a copy of your declaration, your governing documents, your rules, and things like that. But the list is quite long. Copies of all of your contracts, whether it's your management company or your lawn care company or anything like that.
Sure.
Summaries of bids for vendors, even if you didn't award them the contract. You have to keep those for 1 year on your website, which dovetails nicely into what we were talking about earlier with the conflict of interest.
Yeah.
It's keeping all of that out in the open. Your budget, your financial reporting, proposed budgets, proposed financial reports, the certificate of your director. Remember, condominiums, each board member has to either sign a certificate saying that they've read and they will uphold the documents, or they have to go to a class. A copy of that is going to have to be on the website.
Wow.
So, and there are a couple of other things in here, meeting notices, agendas, all of that. And these are these are things that I would recommend anyone publish and have available.
Sure.
But these are going to be required to be on the website.
Now it's going to be legally required that they have a website for this to be done.
And this is condos with units, more than 150 units.
So what you're saying is if you really want to be a really great board member, go to every kickback deal you can go to and take your website down.
Get it now, right?
Get it down.
Yeah. Hurry, before July 1st.
July 1st.
And so that's
We're
as
having
of
a
July
bunch of
1st.
parties.
And how much time do they have before they have to be compliant?
It's July 1st, 2018.
Oh, okay.
Is the deadline for compliance. So
they
you
got
have
a
a year.
year.
So that's
Okay.
what I'm saying. This year, budget
Right.
season. Look at that. Budget for it. Plan for it.
Sure, right. And there's some very easy to use kind of website tools out there, Wix and Squarespace and things like that. So, we'll probably get into that in a future episode, but that's really interesting because again, especially here in Florida with some of these communities that are, some of them don't even have email addresses and, and so this is going to be a huge technical and technological kind of hurdle that they're going to have to get over.
Well, I think a lot of the management companies have been setting up these kind of kind of pretty normal websites.
Yeah.
This is just going to be a lot more comprehensive as to the document control and the document requirement.
Right. The maintenance level is higher. So that might, we talk about board elections, and I think we talk about it in one of the books. Make sure when you're electing a board of directors that, if you can get people to have experience, well, now you might want an IT guy on your board.
Form a communications committee. Make sure you have somebody with some web experience.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, that's been another Condo Coaches radio show. Again, thank you, Candace, for joining us. Thank you, head coach Dean Akers. Don't forget to check out every episode of the Condo Coaches on Facebook, YouTube, and at thecondocoaches.com. See you next time.
You've been listening to the Condo Coaches, brought to you by lmfunding.com. Find us online at thecondocoaches.com and join us this same time next week as we help you navigate life in your managed community.